Okay, so hopefully you guys can see my screen. I'm going to go back to the home page. This is a landing page in the Catylist system. So you guys are able to see that, correct, Jeremy?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good, thanks. Good timing. I meet quarterly with the commercial brokers in Milwaukee to discuss the transactional data. And I met with them over the last few weeks to discuss the transactions that have occurred for Q2. And we should be coming out with that report mid-July for the final report. But it's good timing because I can kind of talk about what they were saying during our meetings. And then I can show you where you can find these reports in our system. And we're going to talk a little bit about what happened over the past year as well. And then Alan's going to also discuss what's going on a national scale. So we handle the markets of Milwaukee, Madison, Minneapolis, St. Paul area. We're opening up in Iowa, Atlanta, and then Alan can talk more on all the other national areas as far as their reporting is concerned. One thing to take of note for Milwaukee is you guys are reporting, or it's been requested that we report on when a lease is signed is when the space has been absorbed. So that is a little bit unique. You should be aware of that. Where a lot of cases, most markets are going to report on when they take occupancy. So the minor difference here is when we report on when a lease is signed, that's true on existing buildings, and it's not going to be on new construction. We don't trigger that until the construction has been completed. So the good example of that is a Hush Blackwell place where they built their new offices. I know that was reported late last or a while back last year, but we didn't capture that absorption until the Q4 when the building was completed. So I just wanted to point that piece out. Where you can find these reports on the landing page towards the bottom, it says reports and it says ready market trends. And if you just click on that, you can see all the reports that are available to you guys in both Madison and Milwaukee. And I think we'll go ahead and start with the industrial market trends. You can see Q1 2021, or we can go back to last year for Q4 to see the overall year, which I think this meeting was really all about. And the reports are generated as such where you kind of get an overview of what's happening here in the marketplace. Get an overview, some of the highlights. You can see the absorption for the quarter was 1.3 million. And then you can see how much is under construction, lease rates, vacancy rates came in at 4%. I will point out that the absorption overall, let me go back to that report. It was 1.3 million, as you can see, but year to date was over 6 million square feet. So you guys had a lot of activity. There's a lot going on in Milwaukee over the year. I would say with the pandemic, the industrial really held the commercial industry. It's been strong in all markets. It just keeps going. And I think what surprises me with Milwaukee is how much new construction is taking place. You guys are, I think, leading the markets I deal with as far as new deliveries that are taking place. So I think that was an interesting note, how strong the new construction is. And with a 4% vacancy rate, we can kind of see why. If we look at just multi-tenant, and these reports are broken up, this section I'm talking about right now is both multi and single tenant. And when you scroll down through the rates, you can see the last few quarters, statistics by the different markets, and we report by county for the industrial side in Milwaukee. Vacancy rates, lease rates, and then some graphs. And then we get down to the second half where we deal with just multi-tenant. And again, last Q4, we had over 1 million square feet of absorption with year to date of 2 million square feet. A lot of the absorption that was part of the 6 million square feet was due to the Amazon building of 2.4 million square feet. So that brought in a lot of space in the Milwaukee market. The vacancy rate overall ended the year at 11.9%. And I can tell you where we are now during this quarter. For industrial, for both multi and single tenant, we had 2 million positive square feet absorption and year to date is at 2.4 million for both multi and single tenant. And just looking at multi-tenant, we're still at 2 million square feet positive absorption and 2.5 million in positive absorption. So it's still going strong. One thing of note is I think we've had positive absorption straight for about 8 quarters. We haven't had any negative absorption in any of the quarters in the Milwaukee area. And Alan, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit what's happening on a national scale for industrial.
Yeah, I got a quick question for you first. The Amazon building, was that a new build or was that somebody else's property? Was it leased or a new build? Build for Amazon, or was it a lease?
It was built for Amazon.
Built for Amazon, yeah. That's one of the, I mean, they're a great large tenant around the country, and we're seeing about 40% build and 60% lease. So they're still acquiring a lot of distribution. The other thing they're picking up are the the last mile stuff, building, not taking down space, 10-12,000 square feet that are in rural areas where they're shipping goods into and then doing last mile distribution. So we're seeing a lot of that takedown by them as well.
And then, Alan, another note, when you brought up Amazon, this quarter, we're going to be capturing about another 1.2 million square feet, roughly. The numbers are still being questioned here, but they're going to be leasing about over 1 million square feet for this quarter as well.
Yeah, and that's lease on those?
That one's a lease deal, yep.
Yeah. Okay, that's good to know. So again, good tenant, good acquirer. Nationally, we're seeing the industrial numbers are, insane. They're the strongest set in the marketplace, and everything that's coming out of the ground is getting taken down in most markets. In general, I'm talking general. LA, I mean, they're running 4%, less than 4% vacancy. And most of that vacancy is stuff that's come up that just hasn't been finished yet and moved into. So it's pretty exciting on the industrial side. The one thing that we had a big conversation yesterday about was life science. I don't know if everybody's been following like Blackstone with their investment in life science. They just did a big podcast on it. And one thing we've seen is the shift of the description of life science from, it's like more super flex now, being called life science compared to the traditional life science where you had reclamation air, reclamation water, everything was maintained inside the building. So the life science category has expanded pretty dramatically. Do you guys have any life science in your couple markets there?
We don't track that specifically for the life sciences.
Yeah. It's just something to keep an eye out, because a lot of people are going to start classifying stuff as life science, and we have to get it out of our industrial reports because it's 3 times the dollars per square foot that the industrial rates are. So it's like push the flex rates way high. And so they're creating their own category now in many markets. So something to keep an eye out for. And if there are those type of buildings, usually around universities, things like that. So I know there's up in Madison, there was one coming out of the ground that was an industrial building that they're turning into a biotech life science property. So
you're still keeping it under the industrial umbrella, but it's having its own subcategory.
Yeah. So it's been growing this last 24 months, since a lot of the office building tenants were work from home. They still had to have the lab work done, and they've been emphasizing the build on the life science buildings with limited office space, but really high-end office space, as well as the lab facilities and everything else that's happening in there. So just a category that's growing. We haven't seen this type of growth in it in years. We had life science in Boston and San Francisco and Seattle and some other markets, but now we're seeing these things pop up all over the country, where rates are, like I said, up to 10 times what an industrial lease rate would be. And they really kill the averages. so they have to be moved out. But just something to keep an eye on, and a growing trend in the markets, especially with what's happening with office space.
Yeah, good to know. Thank you. The other thing I was going to mention is the industrial buildings, class A, B, or C. It doesn't matter the classification. It's still a strong market.
Yep.
We're hearing the brokers are getting multiple offers on class C buildings or class B buildings. It's not just your top of the line industrial buildings. Are you seeing the same in that category?
Yeah, it's interesting because we're seeing, I mean, again, it's not, I wouldn't call it a big trend, but retail space converted to industrial space, we are seeing that because there's no available space. I mean, you're seeing retail buildings that are getting, dock high doors put into them just to store goods. And more in that, last mile type stuff. We're seeing more of a trend of the conversion of retail into some industrial space. We've seen malls convert from malls to distribution centers. So I don't know if that's happening there. Is that going on at all there in the markets?
I know in Minneapolis they did have a Sam's Club that was converted to an industrial hub,
Yep.
HQ type building. So it's your big box type situations being converted, and in fact they already have some dock doors and already built into the building. So
yeah. So I'm concerned of calling it a trend because there is some retail coming back. So we're keeping an eye on that.
okay. And speaking of the retail, we don't formally do a report in Milwaukee, but let's go ahead and touch on that. We may have a few people who are on this call who deal in the retail sector, and I can speak on the other markets that we have with retail. It's starting to come back. We're seeing positive absorption straight for the last couple of quarters for this year already. And I think what's really holding it is the grocery industry is probably the strongest piece of that. But I know in Minneapolis, they got a furniture store that's taking up a couple large spaces as well. And they're expanding into Minnesota. So what are you seeing on the retail front then nationally?
We're seeing the owners of retail properties take a little bit of a sigh of, okay, there's movement in it. I wouldn't say strong across the country. I think a lot of the financing has been taken care of over the last few years. Banks don't want to own these properties, so they've been working very hard to make arrangements with the owners to get through the times. And we're seeing tenants actually opening their business again. I will say one trend that we're seeing is ready to use retail, meaning that there used to be a salon in there. All the chairs are in it. Instead of ripping out everything, they're just like, hey, the next salon, here you go. It's ready to go. Restaurants that left where they didn't take out all the TIs, all the kitchens in, everything's still in there, ready to go again. And instead of doing full rebuilds, we're seeing people move into vacated space that was ready to go. And that's kind of an interesting thing because traditionally everything gets wiped out and rebuilt. But even the people that, they owed leases on the salon equipment, we're seeing that stay in the buildings. A lot of transfer of debt to the new tenants. So everybody is negotiating on retail space, but there's transactions happening, which is great. And that's true across the country.
And how about the lease rates and what they're being charged? Because there's some discussion in our markets where they weren't really charging a base rent. They were charging more based off the income they were able to generate, especially in the restaurants, due to the fact that they were not able to open fully.
Yeah, I just think that goes under the category of however you can pay your bills, and everybody will do what it takes to get through this pandemic times. And I think we're seeing kind of the end of that happening and getting back to real tenants, back to some normal business. A lot of tenants didn't make it. Those spaces are going to be vacant, and they'll eventually get rebuilt or repopulated. So
And I think it creates an opportunity for these new generations of companies coming in where they can take in these spaces and they see a good opportunity there.
Yeah, I think with the unemployment rates where they are, there's a lot of people that want to start their own businesses, and there's some opportunities out there to leverage time into getting into space to see if you can do it. So
and that actually you kind of touch on another problem, especially with the restaurant industry, is if they can't hire people, they can't open fully or some at all just because they can't get the employees in there to work.
yeah, I think that's still temporary. I think there'll be a strong shift here. So you got, a little inflation looming out there, and we'll see.
And it depends if they're still getting money for unemployment like they were in the past.
Yeah,
There's no push to actually get a job since they're getting paid pretty handsomely.
We'll see how that all comes out.
So on the office side, boy, what a roller coaster this has been. I will say we did not capture any type of absorption, positive or negative, based on a work from home mentality until we really got a fix on what's going to happen with the space. Because if you get a company where they're sending everyone home to work from home, that's not really vacant space because they're going to be coming back. And so we just kept that at neutral for the work at home until they actually put it up available for lease, and then we start capturing it. So we're kind of seeing an up and down. Last year for the office sector, we saw for the fourth quarter is 80,000 negative absorption, but year to date is 40,000 positive absorption. And that's going to be for both multi and single tenant. And if you look at just a multi-tenant, we had 47,000 negative absorption for the fourth quarter, but positive absorption year to date is 60,000 square feet. Where we are now coming into this quarter is
I don't think you're sharing your slide.
Oh, no, you're
okay.
right. Thank you. I'll let me go back to the office report here then. Oh, I clicked on the wrong one, sorry. Thank you, Alan. So yeah, so here we had for the fourth quarter, we had the negative 80,000 square feet. The vacancy rate was 16%. And for just the multi-tenants, we had 47,000 negative absorption. And then, as I mentioned, we had a year-to-date of positive 60,000. And then down here, you can see what's happening. We split this out between total, direct, and sublease space. One of the questions and concerns we have when we talk to the brokers on sublease space is we always ask if the space is vacant or not. And they always say no because they're still getting paid rents for it, so they don't consider it vacant. So we changed our questioning to say, have they physically moved out yet, to try and capture the vacancy in the sublease space. The other thing too, and Jeremy, I haven't mentioned this to you as well, for the total chart here for the different markets, we're quoting this on total. I might be adding a couple more pages to show this for both direct and sublease space. And this is really coming into play for really started Minneapolis. The big national news there is Target is vacating about 900,000 square feet on sublease space. And so we wanted to paint that picture appropriately in our reporting. So with that said, though, these reports are going to be expanding. This is run the same way as the industrial reports, as you got both multi and single tenant data. And if you go down about halfway, then you can get down to just the multi-tenant property information. I think a lot of times brokers, when you talk to them, they're more concerned with the direct space. And I think that's why we need to expand our reports to reflect that as well. And so that will be done. Starting this year, it's been pretty good actually for this quarter. The biggest deal obviously is the purchase of the building by Milwaukee Tool. They purchased a property for 370,000 square feet. And so that's going to be a majority of your positive absorption for this quarter. And so that's also bringing up the year to date to be 124,000 square feet. That was a multi-tenant building that they purchased. So after we capture the absorption, we're going to change that to a single tenant. On the multiple tenants only side, we're seeing 335,000 positive absorption this quarter. Year to date is 280,000 square feet. Vacancy rate is going to be 19.2%. So that Milwaukee Tool deal really helped the market as far as bringing down the vacancy. That was really, I think, what I call a needle pusher. It pushed that needle down a little bit on the vacancy rate. What we're seeing in discussing with the brokers is they're seeing some movement now. They're seeing more activity. They're seeing more tours. On the average, they're looking during the pandemic, maybe 5 tours a week. And now I'm hearing they're seeing up around 15 to 20 tours a week. So they're seeing more activity there. It's a lot of smaller stuff. I think the big area of biggest interest is going to be, your 5,000, 10,000 square foot spaces, maybe 15,000. They haven't seen the big stuff being toured yet, the real large spaces of over 20, 30, 40,000 square feet. That hasn't happened. I think the institutionals are kind of waiting for that piece to come around. But the other discussion was they feel what's pushing the market are the employees and not the employers. So the employees are saying, we don't want to come back to the office. We still want to work from home. And so we are hearing that the tours that are taking place are tenants that were looking for 20,000 square foot spaces are now looking for instead 3,000 square foot spaces. And with any catastrophe or big news issues that come aboard, you always see the pendulum swing too far to the other direction. And that's going to be a concern here, is that they're shortening up their spaces quite a bit in anticipation of the work from home model. But what's going to happen a couple years down the road? Do they have it built in that they can expand again? And that's a question that we're going to have to wait and see what's going to happen there. So that's kind of what we're seeing in our markets, Alan. If you have any questions on that or what you see on the national side.
Yeah, I think the thing everybody needs to keep an eye on is that sublease space. I think that still is, it's such a different type of sublease space than in the past. Historically, when it was sublease, either the tenant moved their entire business to a new location and they subleased it, or they couldn't stay in business and, they were paying rent on it. It was cheaper than doing business and trying to get it subleased. What we see right now is we see like large law offices that had 3-4 floors that are going down to 2 floors and trying to sublease the other 2 floors. So it's a whole different type of sublease that we've seen. And again, the key is going to be what percentage of their staff are they going to bring back to the office? And I think, Chris, what you said with the employees across the board, a large portion saying, I'm efficient at home. I get an extra couple hours a day that I don't have to commute. And let's figure this out because I've been able to work for a year at home. Why can't we continue this? Another thing that we're seeing that's trending in that office space are what we call, they're taking out a whole section of cubicle space and putting in management rooms, they call them, where one manager can be at the office and their whole team can be remote, but they have a shared whiteboard. They can have their meetings all in Zoom or whatever technology that they're using. And they're setting up these spaces as if you have somebody's in the office, some remote, it feels like everybody's there together. And so they may clear out a whole section of cubicles and put about 10 of these the management rooms in to be able to continue like you're in an in-office environment, make that experience similar for everybody in the space. So we're seeing some of that. I know at Moodys we're doing that ourselves with one of our floors, and again the trend will be how many employees want to go back and work in the office, and what kind of pressure that they help form management's decisions about where people are going to be and how they work. I think I'm a geek. So on the geek side, we've always wanted to see how people could work using technology. And this whole industry was forced to learn technologies on how to communicate, how to have video conferencing. Prior to the pandemic, we put in video conferencing in brokerage offices all over the place, and everybody was timid to use it. Either the broker was or the client was, and it wasn't a huge success. But now, I mean, they're video conferencing on their phones. It's just part of communication now, and that's going to have a long shift on how the business is done and how corporations communicate. So we're seeing executives that during the pandemic moved out of their corporate headquarters area that are going to be telecommuting. A lot of big name tech companies in California have given up, a lot of office space or making it sublease because they have, less than 50% of their people will come back into the office. I think that trend of what the employees want to do, especially when it's hard finding employees, are going to dictate how these offices reopen. I think the office is the most unknown category that we have.
That's a good statement. I would agree with that. And as some of the brokers were saying, they almost feel like the employers need to take back control because they don't have that control with what the employees are demanding.
Yep.
And you brought up the attorney firms. I think that's probably one of the larger segments of that industry that's downsizing. Maybe followed a little bit next by the technology industry, unless you see anything different on that.
No, I think the law offices are the. I mean, I was on a call with a broker and interviewing a managing person from a law office, and they were like, we don't need a 6,000 square foot library in our law office anymore. Nobody has been in that room in 5 years. It's all online. Everything's online.
Yeah.
So, the room was sitting there. It's been sitting there for years. Nobody's been going into it. Now they're actually looking at that space and going, okay, let's reevaluate how we use space. And I think every company is kind of looking at that. That goes back to those management rooms that I was talking about.
Yeah.
Everybody is stepping back and reevaluating how they're going to use office space. So I think definitely there's going to be this tech shift in traditional office space.
And I mentioned the analogy of the pendulum swinging extremely to the other opposite side. Do you think it's going to swing back in a year or two down the road, and people are going to have to reassess this again based on their spaces?
No magic ball. I think, I mean, it depends. I mean, every factor brings, insight to it. Will inflation creep in? That's going to put more control back into the employers. This is an unknown. I don't have a magic ball. So all we can watch is what's happening now and what's trending.
Yep.
And, I'm interested to see, what inflation means to this new way of doing business. So we have to watch all that stuff.
Yeah. And I do want to make a quick note. I mentioned Target vacating in Minneapolis a large amount of space. That was not they still have a ton of space in Minneapolis, so they haven't vacated everything. They're just really moving and condensing those employees to some of the other spaces that they have already. So
did they say what percentage were going to be remote versus in-house, or did
they still don't know? And they got a couple bases. They still got a home base in Minneapolis. They got one in Brooklyn Center, which is one of the northwest suburbs that they're going to be dividing them up to. But one of the numbers I've been hearing is workers that are coming back in the offices is around anywhere from 10 to 20%. I don't know what you're seeing on a national scale, but that's kind of what I've been hearing in our markets.
I don't have that answer in front of me, so
yeah.
I saw somebody was asking about new construction. Industrial new construction is through the roof. We're seeing, it's interesting. Outside Houston, we're seeing new 10-story office buildings being built. So we saw some companies shift around, locations for tax reasons, other things, and they need space. And there's a lot of city community incentives in different markets to put up buildings. So I would say the majority of new construction happening is in the industrial sector. I want to say successful new construction that we see, because almost all that coming out of the ground is taken down. Everybody wants to upgrade their space. It's just a real strong sector. Office, we're not seeing a ton of it. People don't seem, if they have the funds to build, they're building what they had prior to. And we are seeing some use specific construction coming out of the ground. But again, most of it is already planned to be occupied. So the other side of that is there's some building in some other city that they can move from that isn't occupied. So
and we're seeing that kind of the same thing in the industrial side. It's booming, and you're going to see a lot more spec industrial buildings going up because they know they can lease it out. On the office side, it's got to be pre-leased before they're going to start building in most cases.
I will say an interesting thing is we're not seeing retail new construction. Not a surprise, but we are seeing retail remodel. So there's a lot of retail owners that have tenants that haven't been in the building and taking the time right now to refresh their buildings.
And then going also on your construction, one of the things that was discussed in our meetings is being able to get the steel and to be able to start the construction. So that's delaying people from starting it, even though they want to get going, they can't.
Yeah, I would say that's a great point, and I thought about it before this call. But one of the reasons why you see so much industrial is their concrete tilt-up stuff. So that's something that's readily available that they can get their hands on to build with. If you're looking at 40%, 7 months, 40% increase in lumber supply, that's a big dent in your budget to build. So you either had to have bought the materials, pre-bought the materials. It is tough and expensive to build with wood and steel right now. So I think that favors, again, the industrial markets.
The other thing that we're seeing is the repurposing of office buildings into MUHs.
Yep.
We're seeing a fair amount of that happening as well.
Yeah, that was in New York. They've got some buildings that were office buildings that are going to be apartments and hotels. So there's shifts happening. I think it's still early. I mean, it feels like we've been in this pandemic forever, but I think the actual fallout outcome is happening over these next 4 quarters. So it'll be interesting to watch.
Right.
Someone was asking about cap rates. Here, can I share my screen?
Yeah, I'll stop sharing. So go ahead, because I'm pretty much done with my part of it. So we're good.
Okay, let me just jump on here. I do want to direct people to clean up the screen here.
It's going to be for the Reese reports.
Yeah, well, just a couple things. Okay, let me.
So while Ellen is getting his screen going, please feel free to chat with us. Let us know if you have any questions. We'll make sure that we get to them. Just jump in at any time. We'll try to leave a little bit of time at the end as well to make sure that we get any questions answered that you guys might have. So what I want to share is people should take this address down. I'll put it into the chat. This is... Oops, I can't put in the chat. Maybe Alexis can send this URL out after the presentation.
But the thing about Moodys and with the acquisition of us is they provide a lot of future driven analysis on commercial real estate. They share that information with the lenders that are a major customer of theirs, and they have to do a lot of forensic insight. They've got a whole team of PhD data scientists that are constantly putting out analysis. And if you go to this reese.com/insights, these are where all these papers are, and they're published pretty frequently. All sorts of different categories, all sorts of different content. So if you're really focused on, cap rates, you can click cap rates and it'll pull up articles on cap rates and what's the near term. So this is exactly answers the question. There's some really good, solid content on this page and using real data to come up with forward-looking analysis of what's happening. So I wanted to share this page with everybody. So Alexis, can you send that URL out after the call? So the other thing, which is available now in the system, is okay to jump over this, Chris?
Go right ahead. Yep.
Okay. So now when you go into the system, let's say you were looking at apartments and you're trying to find out what's going on with apartments. So I can go in here, I can choose multifamily. I can click on any apartment in here. I can look at this one. And if you go to full page, there's a new tab that we just added called Analytics. And this is the data that Moodys has collected and created reports. And if I go, there's two options. There's a full market report. So this would be the Milwaukee market, and the sub-market would be the North Shore report. So I'll click on this one here, and it will generate the latest numbers they have for that market. So it takes a couple seconds to build the report. And these are available on any property that's in a surveyed market area. So we'll give this a second because it's a pretty in-depth report. And the thing about Moodys, what they do different than other companies out there is they're a forward-looking analysis versus looking in the rearview mirror, because anything that happened over a year and a half ago doesn't impact what's happening today. So they're taking all the recent trends and everything else and analyzing those. So let me go back and click that again. And those are captured in here. They write narratives in here. These are great to share with clients on what's happening, what different scenarios mean to the market. Again, these are available on the full market and sub-market. So in these reports, it'll show you the different markets that are captured, gives you kind of a breakdown. And then this is that forward-looking analysis that they generate. So this is multifamily. So these are price per unit type stuff based off of the asking rents of apartment spaces. But there's a lot of in-depth analysis, and they break it out, comparing it to the US, what's happening, the different baselines for the markets. Very helpful reports if you're trying to do some assessment for a client. But again, a lot of forward thinking information in these reports.
And this is available for any property type. If you would have selected an office or an industrial building, retail, doesn't matter. You'll be able to get a report that's specific to that use in that area. The other thing I want to point out, Alan, is the market that you addressed at the beginning may not coincide specifically to what we have as our markets in that area. So just be aware when you look at the geographical area that it's covered.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Moodys is doing reconciliation right now to use what, so we're all using one market. And so there'll be some reconciliation on the submarkets and markets, integration of other data into this as well. But again, these insights are written by their data scientist team. Just a lot of really good information. And then you could get this down to the submarket level. So this will be, what submarket is this? This will be the north, what they call the North Shore submarket.
Yep.
And this would be an apartment. So they have different markets based off different types. So we'll let this one load. And this will be more of a specific report specifically for this area. But again, these are all very, you know, detailed. They capture the transactions, all the information that's happening in that market. And
This
again,
is a
they're
very
available.
good new feature, Alan, that really just came out a couple weeks back, right?
Yeah, this only been on there for probably 3 weeks. And, you know, people are just discovering, and we're trying to get the word out. We sent out communications about it. But again, if you go in here, I can go to, let's just say office. And the same thing, all you have to do is go into here, go to full page, click analytics, and then the reports are available to you. So throughout the entire system, we've just started adding content since we were acquired, you know, December 31st. So I've just got my hands on their data sets. We're digging through them. We're bringing them across. We've got some really cool stuff like actual city level zoning will be applied into the system. There's a whole laundry list of data that's coming in. There'll be on-screen analytics where you can choose your survey set and pull it up. Another nice thing that was just changed in the system, which everybody should know about, is when you go to generate a report. Let me select a couple things here. When you go to generate a report, you now have this common view where if you were looking at an individual listing, the report selection list was different. So if I go in here and look at this individual listing to generate a report, I'm going to get the same options. So we've reconciled all the reports. They're all now available from anything that you click on. If you're on an individual property, you'll have some additional options than on a multi-set of properties. So I'm gonna save this to a list. So a couple things that people aren't aware of is when you do a report, we're adding more peer reporting reports, comparing the subject property to others. So there's this choose subject property option in the system now. If I click on that, I can say make subject, and now that one is the subject property. So anytime I use a report that peers to the subject property, like the 4UP comparison, the subject property will be on the left. If I print a cover page and I want to include the subject property, I hit yes. Now that I have a subject property, it'll put the photo of that property on the cover page of the report. And I can put the title, I can upload my client's logo onto that report and really detail out a cover page with the subject property. So that gives you some additional options there as well. So the subject property was a key piece to it. The Reese reports integration, there's just a lot of changes happening in the system. So it when the organization there sends out emails, you know, we're trying to communicate out as much as possible of these changes as they happen. Catylist is getting more development resources, so we're pulling in more tools, more data, more features constantly. The other thing is our expansion. Over the next 36 months, we will be expanding across the whole US. So your access to the system will expose you to availabilities across the country, which is pretty exciting.
Alan, could you go back to the search then quick? And
Yep.
we did have a question about office medical. If you could just point out how they would find that.
Yep. So you choose under property, building, you choose office, and then medical dental.
So, and then if you want to zoom out, just so they can get a clearer picture of the US.
Yep. Let me do one other thing, because there's always another way. Let's say listing broker it wasn't really a office medical building, but the space was built out for medical. You can also go up here, choose office, and go to keyword, type in medical, and you would also get anything that had a description of medical in the comments or hashtags or whatever they put on it to say that this is, maybe it's a medical space in a retail center. Let's see if there's any of that. Yep. So those are, if you wanted like a dentist office in a retail center, these are our prime options. But keywords are very fluid and can bring a lot more content to the surface.
And if you could go back to type again for the drop down, I think it's important that they understand the importance of the space use compared to the property building type, because if you have a retail space in an office building, you probably want to select the space use for retail rather than a retail property type. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yep. So under space use, this is the actual space that's for lease. If I wanted some retail space, let's say like what Chris was talking about, but I wanted to be in a multifamily building. Maybe there's a big high rise. I want to open a little restaurant underneath a big high rise apartment complex, or in an apartment complex, or I want to do a breakfast lunch, coffee shop maybe in an office building. So I can then search office buildings with retail space available in them, and then for lease. So this would give me the office buildings that have retail space in it for lease. So let's take a look at a couple of these. So here's one here, and they've got a retail space available on the main floor. So space use is the best use of the space that's available. And then the property is the overall category of the building that space is in.
And then, Alan, there's one other thing I want to point out here that I think is difficult for people to find is land sale comps. So if you select a sold, you want to do space use land. And the reason that's important is if that property has now been improved and maybe there's an industrial building on it, you'll still get the land sale comp before the improvement was built.
Yep. So like this one here is now an industrial building, but there's a sold comp on it when it was land. So that's why you can see these different colors, because the land is purple and blue is industrial and multifamily. So these are post-transaction, the property has changed, but the actual time, at the time of the transaction, it was land.
Yeah, so we do get that question. I wanted to bring that piece up. And then if you don't mind zooming out on your map, they can kind of see that they can search anywhere in the US currently if they were not aware of this previously. So, and like Alan was saying, you guys you're planning on expanding into many more metros coming up.
We're up to 3.1 million properties. We will have 10.6 million properties when we're completed. We are building out about 30,000 buildings a week right now. And in 4 weeks, we'll be at 60,000 buildings a week until we complete the project, which will be about 18 months.
And I think it's important to also say that you not only get research access, but you also get listing exposure access nationally. So you get both sides of the coin, actually. And again, that just comes along for your ticket price to the Catylist platform, to the exchange, is that you not only get full research access to sale comps, availabilities, historical data, so on and so forth, but you also get all of that listing exposure with leads and all that traffic coming into your pages.
Yeah. So another thing that happened last week was on the Moodys product that their institutional investors have access to. Every time a property is displayed from Reese or from Moodys, they're the same company, but just different brands. There is now a link to Commercial Exchange. So if you are a listing broker and let's say somebody from Bank of America is looking at their portfolio inside the Moodys network, and they pull up one of their buildings and there's a button that says nearby properties. They click that, it goes to Commercial Exchange, and they can see the brokers that are servicing that area and are highlighting, we're highlighting those brokers to those institutional investors. And the same thing with, your Blackstones and everybody else who have institutional access to analytics and reports via Moodys, now have direct access to Commercial Exchange. Since that link went up, we've had a 30% increase in traffic of Commercial Exchange just off that link going into that environment. And all their tens and tens of thousands of institutional clients now are a button click away. And that button we put every place in the system so they can get to Commercial Exchange.
There's a couple other features in here that I think, Jeremy, we're going to bring up on this session. I think one was the traffic and the leads aspect of it.
Yeah. So I'm going to go, if you click on the navigation here on the left, the Catylist research, and you go to leads, we've done a couple other improvements. We're trying to capture more information from the public. You can see here that who is looking at your listing, who's using it, where they were accessing it from. You can see these were brokers inside of our network using it. Here's somebody from Commercial Exchange that was looking at this broker's listings. And you can export this data out to Excel, import it into your CRM, whatever you have, and get a really good sense of who's looking at your listings and what are they doing with it. If a broker opens one of your flyers or they include it into a report, like this person here probably has a client that's interested in this type of space, it included in the report, so you know that that's happening. I'm going to go back to the home page here, and then traffic. This will show you, the traffic that's happened over the last 30 days on your listings. You can look at your office. I'm logged in here as a Lee Associates, and you can just see the steady traffic from the different sources and also where people around the country are looking at those listings. So you can kind of see where those views are coming from. But it's a real nice way to share with your client, the exposure you're providing them, and the constant traffic growth. And this report can be downloaded as well.
So when you click on all listings drop down here, Alan, you can also select a specific property.
Yep.
That and this is suite based, it's not property based.
That's correct. Yep.
So if you have 5 suites in one building, you can select each individual suite.
Yep.
Is there a way that that you could roll this up to a property level? Or would that just be exporting it out and then?
Yeah, that you would use the export from the leads page and then roll that up.
Okay. All right. And then the other piece that we wanted to mention is that we're making a big push to try and get all ownership on all the property records. And I know, Alan, there's going to be some assistance through the Moodys side with that as well.
Yeah. So I'll show you how that works in a market that's complete. So if I go into Colorado here, and let's see, let's just go into this area here. And I go, I don't want to bring in that much data. let's just grab these. So I'm going to go industrial, and then I'm going to say property only. So this is going to give me these 46 buildings, and I go to generate a report. There's a property with contacts report, and this is a new report. And once you guys start getting the true owners into your market, this report will print and it will show you, let's wait for this to load here. But this will be basically your call sheet for these reports if you're trying to get a hold of the actual true owners on it. So it'll break it down by their company and then who the contacts are for the company and all that information. So let's pull this on up here. So you can see this property here is owned by Link Logistics, and here's all their contacts. The primary contact is highlighted, and then this one is Tributary Real Estate. Here's the contacts for it. Northland Insurance, here's a contact for it. So this is really your true owner prospecting report. So you can get real granular in your search to generate this data. Say you only wanted buildings over a certain size. If you're really trying to do a prospecting for a client, or you're just trying to get some listings, once this data is integrated into the system, it'll have that full prospecting feature integrated into it.
And I believe you've shown us in the past, if you wanted to find out everything that Blackstone owns, you could do that.
Yeah, you could go in here. What is it, Majestic? I think I spelt their name wrong. Let's see. No, there they are. So here's Majestic out here. They own all these industrial buildings over here. So also, when you go into the full page, where that analytics tab was under contacts, you will see Majestic Realty Company, and then the contact for it.
Great information, Alan. Jeremy, is there
I will here. Let me show you a trick. If you are using Google or any kind of a search engine and you want exact match searching, you put quotes around, oops, I left out an M. You put quotes around the word that you're looking for, and that way it will eliminate all other results. So if I just typed it in, if I didn't do this with quotes, I would have got anything that had Majestic, anything that had Realty, anything that had Co, period. So if you want that exact match, you can put that in and get exact matching.
So without the quotes, you're pulling in properties that might be on Majestic Avenue.
Yep, yep. So you can see the Majestic Realty Company assets all across the country as well. Prologis, same way. But that's use the quotes and you'll get more accurate results.
Great. Jeremy, was there anything else on our list of items?
Yeah, the only thing that we want to talk about is, like we talked about, we're taking a very aggressive push with making sure that the ownership data is in the system, and that's going on right now. You'll start to see those results here. Literally any day now, you're going to start to see some of those come through. We're doing a complete tax owner data refresh as well. So with assistance with Moodys, we're going through an effort of making sure that all of the tax data, all of the assessment type data is fully refreshed, and we're going to be a little bit smarter going forward, meaning that that data will be more refreshed or more current as the data changes with the county or with the municipality level. So there's some little things like that just from the data side that are being improved.
Yeah, I think that's huge, Jeremy, because the difference is when we were just Catylist, we only got that data once a month. And sometimes it could be 60 days because if it didn't make it in that month cycle, it could have been pushed out and it didn't update in 60 days. we're probably August 1st, we're going to be switching to daily feeds out of all the counties, 2,000 counties across the country, thanks to Moodys and you know, their data buys, to be able to do those updates on a daily basis versus a annual or a maybe 30, maybe 60-day basis. So that data will be hot off the press daily. We're real excited about that.
Yeah, there's constant changes. There's a lot of cool things coming down the pipe yet that we're still exploring. Things that we don't even know about yet that we're still kind of drooling over and trying to work through. So stay tuned with some of that stuff because there's some neat things coming.
Yeah, and again, I mean, they didn't even have any idea of all the data that they had. I'm up to my, you know, shoulders in data trying to figure out what we have access to. And you know, mortgage, you know, there'll be a flag. This is an exciting one. There will be a flag on the properties that are set to likely to sell or likely to transact because the mortgage is due on it. The loans coming, you know, loans coming due. They've got a whole data scientist program that they're putting together to model every asset across the country in its likelihood of selling in the next 6 months. And that's going to be updated and applied all the time. So you'll be seeing these little alerts on buildings that says high likely of transaction in the next 6 months. And there's, you know, tenant shifting. We know Moodys tracks tenants, all the different tenants. So that tenant shift, they know that there could be closing and it's a big tenant in that building. There's a note due on it, all this other stuff. CMBS reporting, if you saw the press releases last week, all the integration of the CMBS data into the Moodys product is coming through the pipeline right now. It's overwhelming, actually.
Fantastic. Does anybody have any last questions? Go ahead and chat with us real quick. We do appreciate you guys joining us today. As you can tell, we're very passionate about what we do, and like Ellen said, we're kind of all geeky about this stuff, and we just absolutely love it. So we're going to continue to work hard, and we're going to continue to push as hard as we can. Let us know if you have feedback. We're going to, obviously, we're good listeners, and you know, we're going to steer the direction that you guys want us and need us to go. So let us know if there's anything we can do for you guys.
And I would say too, Jeremy, that there's been numerous changes in the system that have been started from you guys, the users, who say, hey, can you do this type of feature in it? And we bring it up to Alan and his team and they incorporate it. So
yeah, we meet constantly. We're constantly meeting with the development team, the data team, so on and so forth. So keep your suggestions coming. We're gonna obviously listen to you guys, and we queue them up, and even if they don't happen immediately, they do stay in queue, and we do revisit all ideas actually quite frequently. So again, thank you guys so much. Alexis, thank you so much. I'll let you close us out if you'd like. Okay, no, maybe not. Thank you guys for all being here. Again, let us know if you have any questions. I think that was the end of our program. Thanks, Ellen, for being here. Thanks, Chris. Good work. We'll talk to you guys soon.
take care.
Bye, everybody.